All right, good morning. Thank you for coming and tuning in. This is the New Mexico Public Regulation Commission open meeting on July 10, 2025, and it's 10 a.m. And we'll go ahead and get our meeting started with a roll call.
Commissioner Nyberg,
Present.
Commissioner Aguilera,
Present.
Commissioner O'Connell.
Present.
All commissioners are here and you have a quorum, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. And now it's time for the Pledge of Allegiance. We'll do that.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Salute the flag of the state of New Mexico, which is a symbol of perfect friendship among the peoples.
All right, commissioners, we have an agenda before us. Are there any suggested changes that need to be made to the agenda? Okay, hearing none, I will move to approve the agenda that was posted on our website.
Commissioner O'Connell,
Yes.
Commissioner Aguilera,
Yes.
Commissioner Nyberg.
Yes.
The motion to approve the agenda as posted passes unanimously, Mr. Chair.
The next item on our agenda is public comment. Is there anybody here in person to provide public comment? Can you please go ahead? And then Mr. Rodriguez will go ahead and queue up the next people who are registered to provide public comment online after this in-person comment. I think we only have one in-person comment. We would be able to do that, yes.
So this is a.
Please turn the mic on and introduce yourself.
Sure.
Here we go. Okay. My name is Glenn Weichel. I'm here representing Third Act. And I am an electrical engineer, a recent graduate of New Mexico State University with a master's degree. And I did my research on clean energy, grid decarbonization. And I also study public regulation. So that is a letter signed by 330 New Mexicans who oppose declaring hydrogen as a zero carbon resource. There's a letter about 4 paragraphs long, which I'll leave to you to read because I have my own public comment. This is so intimate. I'm always, on the other side of the video across town watching you, so this is a new experience for me. I also want to mention that I serve on the stakeholders committees for IRPs for both EPE and PNM. So I'm very familiar with what's happening in terms of the investor-owned utilities and their long-term plans. So like many people, I watched in horror this week the news of dozens of children swept to their deaths by floodwaters in Texas. The super rapid flood was caused by a massive rain bomb, one of the many forms of climate catastrophe resulting from burning fossil fuels in power plants. And you might notice today's New Mexican has another instance of this here in Ruidoso, and the article goes on to talk about they are still recovering from wildfire damages, another climate catastrophe caused by burning fossil fuels. So given the worsening climate crisis, we need a laser focus on replacing fossil fuel power with carbon-free energy. I see that as the most important responsibility of this commission. A carbon-free future is in your hands. I commend the recent improvements you have made in professionalism and efficiency in this agency. Your very competent staff knows when to say no to a low-impact, distracting docket. The course to affordability in New Mexico to reach the 80% renewable energy target by 2040 is very clear, even without tax credits and with the prospect of import tariffs. Wind and solar paired with battery storage are the cheapest technology for achieving carbon-free power systems. and the 80% RPS goal. All current hydrogen-based technologies, which might conceivably emit no carbon dioxide, are far from being ready for grid-scale use. Furthermore, hydrogen itself is a planet-warming greenhouse gas. Rules for hydrogen would have to take into account its leakage from electricity generation facilities. The petition in front of you today asks you to make rules about speculative future technology. These rules would support decisions which may or may not need to be made a decade from now at the earliest. Before then, the legislature could change the law on doing your hard work. The PRC has a full plate and limited resources. I'm sure you know what lies in front of you, but I feel compelled to state this for the public record. In order to prepare New Mexico to complete the clean energy transition, the PRC must reach important decisions on the following activities: grid modernization, virtual power plant pilots, RTO market adoption, expanding transmission capacity, dockets for at least 2 sales of public utilities, supporting the launch of phase 1 community solar, completing rules for phase 2 community solar, improving administration of utility interconnect queues, geothermal energy pilots, responsible retirement of New Mexico's last coal plant, ensuring there is a good policy for controllable large loads, and responsible growth of the AI data center industry. With all this and more on your plate, I hope you will dismiss this speculative hydrogen petition to avoid a distracting docket with no short or medium-term impact. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comment. Mr. Rodriguez, do we have anybody? Well, we do have people, I think, online. Can you please manage those comments?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Camilla, go ahead.
Okay, can you? Because the volume is a little bit low in the room here. Or actually, if the person.
Can you hear me?
If please just introduce yourself and we'll gauge whether.
Of course.
We can hear you.
Okay, my name is Camilla Feibelman. Are you able to hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Great. Okay, thank you so much, commissioners and staff, first of all, for hearing me out and for your service. I'm Camilla Feibelman. I'm the director of the Sierra Club's Rio Grande chapter, and I'm asking you here today to deny MNERD's request for rulemaking that would allow consideration of hydrogen as a carbon-free resource. I'd like to review the science behind hydrogen. Let's look at green hydrogen, harvested from water with renewables, stored and run through a fuel cell at night. This might be close to carbon-free, but EDF has found that there is leakiness associated with the highly energetic hydrogen that, when it occurs, combines with molecules in the atmosphere to produce associated greenhouse gases. But the idea that methane-sourced hydrogen could be a source of carbon-free that could be a carbon-free resource is clearly and blatantly false. To harvest methane, you need gas. Gas is extracted in New Mexico and is subject to methane and ozone rules, but comes nowhere near zero emissions. MNERD requires a 98% capture, but that only applies to venting and flaring of methane. NMED covers leaks, but those are not included in the 98% capture requirement, and leak detection and repair is not frequent enough to come anywhere close to being meaningful. Further, the burning of gas to power the harvesting of hydrogen results in carbon emissions, which would have to be sequestered. But CCS technology is speculative and not well tested. Storage and transport of hydrogen also results in leaks and the production of associated greenhouse gases I mentioned just before. Finally, the combustion of hydrogen results in on-the-ground air pollution, worse than the combustion of gas itself. And while I know the PRC doesn't regulate criteria pollutants, it should consider the public interest when it comes to attempts to misrepresent a fundamentally fossil-fueled energy as carbon-free. Please deny this request and focus your efforts on proven, renewable, and carbon-free energies. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your comment.
All right. Annie, are you online?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead with your comment.
Morning, Commissioners. My name is Ani Hanna, and I live in Albuquerque. And I'm deeply concerned that as greenhouse gas emissions continue to rise, we face increasingly severe weather extremes, from catastrophic flooding that we've seen these weeks, deadly heat waves. The transition away from fossil fuels to renewables is imperative, and the Renewable Portfolio Standard is designed to support true renewable energy sources. And currently, hydrogen is produced through the combustion of fossil fuels, resulting in substantial greenhouse gas emissions. At this time, we cannot consider hydrogen to be a renewable energy source. Regulations should follow science and evidence rather than precede them. This is not the time for the PRC to consider this petition, since zero carbon hydrogen does not yet exist. And paragraph 23 of the petition suggests that hydrogen may become viable in the future. And when that zero carbon hydrogen does become viable, then is the time to make these decisions. And what is urgently needed now is an investment in proven renewable energy sources to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and address climate change. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chair, that's it for individuals providing comment online.
Thank you all for those comments. Do we have anybody else in the room who would, excuse me, like to provide comment? Yes, we have one more, please. Go ahead and step up to this microphone up here and introduce yourself.
Can folks hear me? Okay. Hi there. My name is Alejandria Lyons. I am the coalition coordinator for New Mexico No Coal Solutions, and I'm here to urge you today to reject the petition asking PRC to classify hydrogen as a zero carbon resource under the Renewable Energy Transition Act. Hydrogen, as many folks I'm sure have mentioned, is not a renewable resource. It's a fossil fuel rebrand. This petition is not grounded in science or law. It distracts from the real urgent work transitioning to clean, proven technology. Most hydrogen today is produced using methane, releasing carbon and consuming massive amounts of water. Even so-called green hydrogen is made with renewables. It's highly inefficient, costly, and dangerous to store and transport. And blue hydrogen requires carbon capture sequestration, meaning that this can directly raise our emissions by more than burning fossil fuels directly. So let's stop pretending that this is a clean solution. It's not. And under the current New Mexico law, hydrogen is not considered a renewable resource. The new Renewable Energy Act defines renewables as solar, wind, geothermal, biogas, not speculative hydrogen. We believe that the PRC does not have the authority to rewrite those definitions. As for the New Mexico Supreme Court ruled in EGOF versus the PRC, creating or amending this is the job of the legislature. And if Secretary Carradine and Emner want to change this law, they need to go through the legislature. And they've tried for many years, and our coalition has seen it, and it has failed. Community does not want this. The petition is legally flawed. It is also premature and wasteful. I just think that's kind of what Ani Hanna had alluded to. Right now, this hypothetical hydrogen industry wouldn't even exist in 2045. In paragraph 23, the petition says Emner believes hydrogen might become viable in the future. Belief is not evidence. We do not make rules based on maybes. Meanwhile, we have real crises to address: grid reliability, decarbonization, ratepayer protection, and real solutions like solar, wind, storage that are already working. We cannot afford to waste PRC time and taxpayer money on these maybes. This is just a fossil fuel rebrand, and this is looking for the fossil fuel interest for a second act. This petition sends the wrong message. It tells oil and gas to keep drilling. It tells frontline communities most impacted by climate, which I know we are all seeing today in Ruidoso and other parts of the state, that this climate change that we're seeing and this extraction, that we're telling community that their chance can wait, that their futures can wait. New Mexicans have fought for real progress, community solar, an ambitious renewable portfolio standard, and growing renewable infrastructure. Let's not unravel by redefining the law to suit an industry desperate to stay relevant. Please dismiss this petition. Let's stay grounded in science, in law, and in justice. Let's move forward, not backward, climate. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you for your comment. Okay, the next item on the agenda is announcements. And before we get into the regular announcements of hearings, I do also want to recognize the flooding that has occurred in the wildfire scarred community of Ruidoso and around there. Our thoughts are with them and with our neighbors in Texas as well, who also are dealing and have been dealing with flooding, and in other parts of the country as well. And so the PRC will continue to monitor in Ruidoso, and you know, there might be utility services that need to be brought back online, and want to thank the utilities and their staff ahead of time for the work that they will be doing to make sure that the utility services are brought back online when that community needs them. So I'll move first to announcements from the General Counsel's office, and then
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't have any announcements from RGC.
in terms of announcements, I do want to announce a few hearings that we have coming up and some workshops. On July 17, we're hosting a public workshop on wildfire mitigation. It's going to focus on risk assessment and insurance. And so this will be the second workshop out of 4 in our wildfire workshop series. And we'll be in person here at the Bochum building, and the stakeholders and public can also participate virtually. On July 17 as well, we're going to have a public hearing that's scheduled for El Paso Electric's application for Renewable Energy Act Plan for 2026. The docket number for that is 25-00038 UT. On July 18, we're gonna have a public hearing for SBS's accounting authorization request regarding liability insurance cost. The docket number for that is 25-00030 UT. Both of those public hearings are going to be virtual, and they were both recently rescheduled, so you can confirm the most up-to-date information in our e-docket system. Commissioners, do you have any additional announcements?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do have one announcement. That's to introduce my advisor, Angela Nagopnia. She is at the far end of our left wing, at least from our perspective. She's a recent graduate of New Mexico State University with went through the energy program under Dr. Blank and the other professors there, and we certainly like to welcome her, and I'm certainly elated to have somebody who can assist me in this tremendous education process that I've been going through. So I would like to welcome Angela. Thank you for being here today.
Yeah, I can't top that, so that's.
All right, the next item on the agenda is approval of prior meeting minutes. So we have 2 minutes for one for a special open meeting on June 6th and one for a regular open meeting on June 12th. I included a few small edits in the, I think it was the June 12th regular open meeting minutes. Commissioners, do you have any additional changes, or is there a motion to approve the meeting minutes?
Yeah, I just searched and replaced John Bagatko's June 6th minutes. Other than those details, I didn't have any.
With that, I guess I would move to approve the June 6th and June 12th minutes as revised in Board of Ed.
I'll second.
2 seconds.
Mr. Nyberg? Yes. Mr. Aguilar?
Yes.
O'Connell?
I just seconded so we could vote on these.
Is that a yes? The motion to, excuse me, approve both sets of minutes as revised passes unanimously, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is consent action items. We have 3 items on the agenda. Commissioners, is there any discussion or motion to approve the consent agenda items?
Mr. Chair, I would like to briefly discuss item number 25-0005 UT. Basically, I did take some time to rewrite the order, but I think my comments are probably better spent talking to the hearing examiners directly. Let's go ahead and approve the recommended decision as it's before us as in the consent item. But I would like to talk about a couple things. Number one, I did reorder the analysis portion of the recommended decision so that it flowed with the facts. So as I saw the issue before us, there was a request for abandonment and a request for approval of a transaction. Well, the abandonment would not occur until after the transaction, so I thought we should analyze the transaction first, grant the approval, and then do the abandonment issue second. So I rearrange that. And then there were some things in the recommended decision that really went into a lot of analysis of commuters committee case and how the commissions handled that back and forth. And I tried to simplify it and really show that we always consider those 4 factors, but that in this case, really only the 4th factor really applied because the abandonment was really an abandonment of the certificate of convenience and necessity and not the other factors that are associated with abandonment of a facility or abandonment of service. And so I tried to deal with that issue a little bit, but again, it's more form over substance. And so with your permission, I'll sit down with the hearing examiners, Mr. Gecko, and maybe talk about my thought process at arriving at a rewrite of that order. Maybe will help in future recommended decisions. Maybe that's a more efficient use of our time.
Okay, and so when you say a rewrite of that order, is this something that would be put before the commission for a vote? Okay. Thank you for those comments. I do appreciate the research and background that was provided in BRD. The hearing examiners went back and identified some cases that included an abandonment and sale of a transaction, and it seemed to me like they identified inconsistencies in the commission's precedent, and so I appreciated their attempt to reconcile those and come up with a policy that we can use going forward. I do understand the nuances that you're explaining, Commissioner Nyberg, and I appreciate that as well. So thank you for raising that.
Yeah, it's interesting. I wanted to pop in on this one too, just because for my limited experience of the last 2.5 years, this case was remarkable. So for regulatory nerds, it's worth looking at. Summary is reasonable people can be eminently reasonable. You know, what's happening here is just really abandonment of a certificate. It's not an abandonment of service. And by abandoning the certificate, the service can be improved. So wow, you know, that was interesting. And then second, both of your comments, to me, this is a great opportunity for us to move forward on our goals. So yeah, that's awesome. The work you did, Commissioner Nyberg, and then the conversation that work allows you to have with hearing examiners and OTC on how just we can get to this demystifying the process. It's the logic of how the orders get written. And I know hearing examiners are working really hard to improve clarity and conciseness of what their work is. And I think you're going to help them with that. So I just wanted to celebrate that moment. And then my sister's name is Eileen. And so the joke there is, what do you call a woman who has one leg short? This I will attribute that.
Well, Mr. Chair, one thing that Mr. Gecko brought up is if we're going to adopt recommended decisions, should we and should I, in my discussions with the hearing examiners, request that they adopt maybe more of the format of our formal orders as opposed to the format that they're currently using? And that's a question, if you want me to raise that issue with them for.
Well, personally, I would say, yeah, that's exactly part of the conversation. And then it also helps us with efficiency, right? Because let's take advantage of the fact that we have this great crew of hearing examiners and OTC. And for cases like this, it really allows me to focus my time on the things where there's matters in controversy. If they're writing with the end goal in mind, because then potentially making the whole thing the right thing.
And I'd say particularly on orders that we're likely to adopt in whole. Like you said earlier, these straightforward, fairly easy, non-controversial cases, maybe having a format of the recommended decision that are closely tracks with what OGC normally provides to us would be helpful. And so, with your permission, Mr. Gecko and I will have that discussion with the hearing examiner.
Yeah, that works for me as well. And as long as we're doing that, I think it's fine to also think about whether the format we're using in the orders is the right. So, but I think these are things that we can continue to improve, and I appreciate you having those conversations, raising the issue. And last, before the motion on this, I also want to recognize the owners of this water utility, because as the RD explains, they are selling this utility probably for significantly less than it is worth. And the customers can benefit through government funds and also potentially through lower taxes. And just want to recognize that that's not lost on me. And I think the owners here, it appears they are doing a good service for their customers, and want to appreciate that. With that, I would move to. Well, we have all of the consent agenda items, so I would move to approve the 3 items of the consent portion of our agenda.
Commissioner O'Connell,
Yes.
Commissioner Aguilar,
Yes.
Commissioner Nevер. Yes. The motion to approve the 3 items on the consent agenda passes unanimously, Mr. Chair.
Well, for the first time ever, we don't have a regular action items section. And so the next section on our agenda is the discussion section. And first up, we have Will Mount. Will, I believe this maybe is your first presentation? Okay. Well, yeah, please go ahead.
There we go. Perfect. A little slow. Well, I guess I'll kick it off for us. So good morning, commissioners. I'm happy to be here. And our discussion today concerns a petition we received from MNRD. I'll walk through what the petition is requesting and suggest a few paths forward before the discussion starts. So the petition itself, it asks the commission to take 2 actions. One is to initiate a rulemaking. The other action is to talk to the Roundhouse. And the rulemaking would be to ensure that no carbon hydrogen is eligible for treatment as a 0 carbon resource. And talking to the Roundhouse, specifically, they would like for us to pursue a statutory amendment at the Roundhouse, allowing renewable energy certificates for 0 carbon resources. Now, we have a lot of flexibility here. We have a lot of options. So the commission can, option 1 would be, we've received a petition for rulemaking. We can initiate a rulemaking. Option 2 would be that we can decline a rulemaking. And within option 2, within declining to initiate the rulemaking immediately, we can ask MNRD to come back to us and submit a proposed rule and answer additional questions about their petition. We also could invite MNRD to refile and ask them to propose to us a certification process for 0 carbon resources. So those are a few options among many, but the commission has a lot of flexibility here. It's just kind of the main point that I want to tell you guys. And with that said, thank you for listening. And let's start our discussion, and I'll be here to answer any questions.
Commissioners, does either of you want to kick us off?
Mr. Chair, I probably have a number of questions, and throughout our discussion may have some more. So, but my initial questions are, MNRD has rulemaking authority, and I'm wondering, what is it about the statutes that they are wanting us to engage in rulemaking when they themselves could engage in the same rulemaking process? Is there something unique to this agency that we are the ones that need to engage in that rulemaking, or why are they asking us to engage in rulemaking when they themselves have the authority to engage in rulemaking themselves? Is there something unique about this issue with drops and all of it?
Yeah, I don't know if that question was for me or for the commission or but I would guess that it's because the PRC is the one that is in charge of the implementation of especially the 0 carbon requirement that is in our statutes. And so the utilities need to comply with that and we need to enforce the law, that part. So I would say that it's because it's in the portion of the statute that applies to the utilities obligations that fall within our jurisdiction.
I guess when I saw the request, they're asking for a determination as to whether or not it should be declared a renewable resource. And again, I'm kind of conflicted as to whether or not there doesn't have that authority to do it themselves. And as issues come before us, because I'm not sure that utilities aren't asking for it, IMNER's asking for it. It just seems a little bit odd. Have we had it, Mr. Mount, have we had any discussions with IMNER on these issues and maybe some of the rationale behind why they made the request?
Commissioner Nybert, thank you for the question. We have not had any discussions with NMPRC. OGC is not aware of any discussions that they've made to the PRC. They also have, I don't want to speculate, but they could, they have the resources, I would think, to look at this and formulate a different proposal or answer additional questions as we wanted to send it back to them for further comment on the petition.
Yeah, I think what there are two things. One, whether they can do it on their own. I think there's a part of the legislative effort that MNRD could do if they are seeking either a policy change or confirmation of the policy as they understand it. And that's something that they could do by going to the legislature. However, I think what they're focusing on here is the statute that applies to us and the rules that this commission has established pursuant to that statute. And those rules that we have established, the requirements, those MNRD cannot change. We would need to change our own rules if we pursued some sort of change. So I think that's what they're asking for, is either some rulemaking process to change our rules or this administrative notice approach that was also raised in the petition.
The second issue that I have is one of timing. Because it's not a utility that's coming before us and asking for this change. And that is deals with the request, paragraph 2 on page 2. It talks about they want a rulemaking proceeding to ensure that no carbon, hydrogen, electric generation facilities are eligible for treatment as zero carbon resources. That certainly falls within our authority. Shouldn't the effort to deal with the statute come first? And if the legislature so changes, then we could initiate rulemaking under that new statute or under existing statutes to accommodate the will expressed by the legislature. Because declaring, doing what they say and say we declare it a renewable resource, then, or carbon-free resource, then we don't have anything pending before us to use it anyway. It's rulemaking without any immediate effect. And I just scratch my head. We have inundated our regulated entities and the advocates who appear before us on a regular basis with many rulemakings the past few months or years. And this would be another rulemaking activity that our staffs engage in, that we're engaged in. And what's the result of the rulemaking? We have some words on paper, but do we have anything to deal with? And I'm not sure what the rulemaking would be for, frankly. That's kind of my thought on that. The legislative action, that'll be in other people's hands. Whether we engage in that, I guess that's a discussion. But the rulemaking part just seems to be a bit premature. Maybe you guys are aware of something that's in the pipeline, but I'm not aware of anything that's, and I'm not aware of any utility that's requesting that type of facility.
Yeah, and it's the same question that I'm asking myself, and I think that's the first question, maybe, as I go through the analysis here, I think that's the first question to ask, is whether the issue is ripe for consideration. I think there are valid arguments suggesting that this issue is perhaps better taken up in 2040, when we know more about the technologies that exist and utilities are thinking about their resources for the next few years at that time. And so I think you also mentioned that we don't have the utilities asking us this question. That's also something that stood out for me. I mean, the petition argues that this will help provide certainty to the utilities. And I think that's a good question. I don't know that it will. I think not having the utilities here asking us to answer the question does in some way say that they're not thinking about this right now. At the same time, I don't know if they would agree with the petition and agree that this is something that the commission should prioritize, because it might help them. It may help provide them certainty in the future. But I think, at least what I heard from your comments is the same thing that I was wondering, is this right for consideration right now? Or is this issue better considered in the future?
And in that regard, I would, it seems to me that if this is an effort for the state to reach out and say, hey, we're distinguishing our state from maybe other states, and maybe locate things, if there's some economic development opportunities, or there are some reasons for this at this point in time, but those are probably discussions that we need to have with the governor and or the legislature because they may be aware of some things that we need to do it, that they're not aware of right now. So seems to me that we ought to have some dialogue with either the secretary or with the governor and find out what is the real impetus behind this request? Is there something that we're not seeing that's driving this request? If there is, then maybe we need to do something. But if there's not, I'm like you, I just don't know that it's a wide issue for us to engage in another rulemaking. To have words on a page that frankly don't ever get utilized. So I guess when I saw this originally, it was, we probably need to have some dialogue with Secretary Kennedy and or the governor and or maybe the appropriate legislative intercommittees to see if there's something on the horizon. If it's not
Thank you both. I think you highlighted some important things. My big issue with this is I think the petition puts the emphasis on the wrong syllable. Something that we heard in the public comments this morning is don't make rules based on maybes. I think what we haven't heard here is just illustration of the wisdom of that. How do you struggle with that? On the other hand, there is something that's not a maybe. There is a state law requiring with a zero carbon requirement. I do agree that because the law exists and utilities are currently going through integrated resource plans that reach out that far, the issue is right. So what I think is important, and frankly, the petition highlights it very well, is it's very hard to certify whether hydrogen is zero carbon or not, because there's so many different ways to use it and to make it. So what I think MNRD should have done is, instead of asking us to certify hydrogen as zero carbon, ask us to adopt a certification method or process so that when utilities bring in IRPs or when they show up in 2040 with a requirement, we have a way to say, yes, you've met the legal requirement or not. And if we can do that now, then that'll help as technologies are being developed. We don't know what is to know how they're going to be judged and how they're going to be scored as part of meeting that requirement. So I wish MNRD had done that, said, hey, here's a certification process we think will work. And then let's use hydrogen as an example of different myriad of ways that hydrogen can be created. And if you do it this way, it's zero carbon. If you do it that way, it's not. So I would have preferred that they do that, but I think it is right. I think we do need to address the petition. So that's why I think it's great we're having this conversation here, because if we just left it up to poor Mr. Mountain here, he might have had 5 different orders and we wouldn't have been able to decide on a single one. So I hope through this discussion, we can give him some guidance to then help us address the petition. So my suggestion would be just whatever's the right process or legal requirement. If we want to include consultation with them there before we do it, that's good too. But say, hey, no, you need to bring in what you think a certification requirements. So like, and then my personal belief is using RECs as zero carbon is the wrong approach. And again, hydrogen, great example for why, because one of the hydrogen methods that's included in all this stuff is the green method, which you use renewable energy and water to create hydrogen. So first of all, that means hydrogen does not pass the definition of renewable, right? The big picture definition of renewable is that you can replenish it in our lifetime. Lightest molecule on the planet, hydrogen, doesn't really exist in nature, because whenever it's exposed to air, it's gone. So you have to create it. It's not something that is replenishable. It's the act, you have to take an act to make it. So it's a product of renewable energy. It's not renewable energy itself. And so in that theory, hydrogen is not renewable energy. It's a way you could store renewable energy, right? So then if we're using RECs for storage, you get yourself into all sorts of knots. And then that caused me to, working with Mac Lee, we went back and nerded out on how did RECs get created. And interestingly enough, they came out of Texas first in the 90s, but are relevant to us. The RECs that we use, the Regis certified RECs, were created by the California Energy Commission, which isn't, the California Regulatory Commission, it's their energy office, worked through the Western Governors Association, which now would be WEEB, to create a certification process for renewable energy. And then that led to definition of a REC, and then that led to WEC administering registration and of this certificate that then was documented and tradable. So that's why I keep harping on what MNERD needs to do is propose a certification process for zero carbon. It should be general, so it can do more than certify hydrogen. And I encourage them, if you want to create a lane for hydrogen, show how hydrogen works in your certification process. Don't just come and say, hey, here's something we want to be called zero carbon. And then let me show you 6 different ways we can make it. 5 of those probably aren't zero carbon. So anyway, that's where I'm at is just let's address the petition. I think it is right. I think if we can move the ball forward on providing some level of certainty that when you get there, this is how your zero carbon is going to be judged. It needs to include wind, solar, nuclear, things that people are trying to develop like hydrogen, geothermal, and then be general enough that it can work for other solutions. Because really landing on that zero carbon target, I think is going to require some innovation. So if we want to spur innovation, the best thing we can do is provide a little bit of a roadmap of when you do your innovation, this is going to work. So I think it's right. I think we need to address the petition. I want to kick it back to MNERD and say certification process. And then if you want me to say you get a REC for hydrogen, I'll tell you right now the answer.
Would it benefit us either collectively or have one of us sit down with Secretary Kennedy or another appropriate person, discuss these things before we jump into writing an order of proceeding down this path? Because I certainly would like to know a little bit more about what this is. You've highlighted some things that maybe it is important for the planning process that we deal with it. But as I heard your comments, narrowly focusing the rule on one issue may not be the method. Maybe should be a broader process, which brings other things to the table. I kind of like that idea, but kind of like to have some more information before we vote on the order.
Yeah, I mean, that was you hit on one of my primary concepts is let's focus on the law, which is the zero carbon. And then the other is if you look at landscape, who's best situated to develop a certification process, it's the energy office. So I think talking to MNERD and having that discussion is a good thing to do. I'm more than willing to do it. We could ask them to come to an open meeting. I don't know how you want to do that, but I would not object to that being our next step too, but again, I think we need to address the petition, so I guess not something that takes a long.
Mr. Chair, Mr. McConnell's volunteering, I'm certainly would be comfortable with him having those discussions. Any discussion the secretary would have with the three of us would be an open meeting. It would be subject to other participation. So I think having one of us talk to the secretary so they could get down to brass tacks and, really explore the issues probably is a better use of time and maybe more productive than having the secretary and us collectively in a meeting. That'd be my observation. Probably.
Right, and yeah, I would just ask that whatever communications occur be run by our general counsel's office first. I mean, if this is a rulemaking process, then they have no the ex parte rules are different. It's essentially when the record closes that the commission can no longer communicate. But I think I'm a little confused procedurally where we are right now, and understand that there could be a certification process that would be proposed, but would that be in this docket, or is this docket being dismissed and then we're going to have conversations? That's kind of where I'm not really clear on.
Yeah, me too, but I was kind of hoping we'd have a good conversation and then. For me, that's kind of a question for Mr. Mount, that have you heard enough that OGC can go back and analyze where we at process because they filed the petition, what rules apply, and then that might lead you to come back and say, well, let's deny the petition so we can restart, or there's plenty of things we can do while the petition's pending before we act. So those are the kind of, for me, process questions that I don't think we need an answer on the spot this discussion. But
I'll hop in if it's all right.
yeah, please.
And just say that I can follow up with a very short legal memo on that, just to kind of give us some options on the docket with what we want to do with that.
But in my conversations with certain Mount, there was people, I was asking him who his friend was that gave him this case. Because it's, you got one of the newest members of OGC, you've got something that might last till 2020, so congratulations.
Want to keep them around.
Yeah.
It would just seem to me, Mr. Chair, that we're not taking any action today, obviously, because it's not an action item, but Commissioner O'Connell could have those discussions with the secretary and, go back and that may be the impetus to have an action item in the future in this docket, which would result in an order from the commission. I don't know that we would have to abandon this docket, open the new docket. I think maybe your research will come up with it, but it just appears to me that what we asked for is a discussion to occur with Commissioner O'Connell and the secretary to flesh out some of the questions that we've raised and to come back with Mr. Bounce and maybe arrive at an order that could be discussed at a future meeting, which I think is why we move this to a discussion item on the agenda, not an action item. In the first place was to have some dialogue so that maybe we see one order instead of having you would be right, separate orders and Commissioner O'Connell having a third order. Mr. Mounts having a fourth order and trying to decide which way to go. So I think Commissioner O'Connell is willing to have that discussion and work with Mr. Mounts. Certainly happy to see this continue in this document. I thought that's what we were intending to do when we moved it from an action to a discussion.
I'll say, I mean, I will follow up with a legal memo, but personally, I think it might be nice to just keep everything clean in the same docket.
I just wanted to touch on one of the last things in the petition that caught my eye, which is a request to join MNRD and NMED to propose a statutory amendment. And you've heard this from me before, but I don't think it's the commission's place to be pursuing policy changes that when it comes to, supporting our employees and our building, those things we obviously need to do. But I don't think it's necessarily our place to be advocating for policy changes. I think we can definitely interact and answer questions. And if the legislature is asking us how things could work with our rules, we need to be responsive, but it doesn't sit well with me to be the one leading as, the agency that would later have to have the responsibility of ruling on proposals. I think our job should be more implementation as opposed to trying to change the policy.
I would certainly agree with that, with one additional item. I think we also not only implement, but during the legislative process, I think we're there as a resource, or should be there as a resource to the legislature in providing information. I think you touched on that. So I agree with you that it's leave the public policy up to the public policy makers and not that way. That would be a resource to them if they have questions about how it will affect the regulated entities that we were charged with overseeing, and deal with answering questions that may come up during that process.
So we had this item on discussion, and so we didn't put this up for any kind of action. It's just a discussion today, and so we're not taking any action here. Is there anything else that we should touch on?
What I heard from Mr. Mount is that he's ready to go and take the next step, so I think discussion is succeeding from me.
Correct. So thank you, Mr. Mount.
Thank you. It's an honor.
We threw you into the deep end.
Hopefully we'll see you next time.
Next on the agenda, we have a presentation by the Consumer Relations Division, and we have Mr. Ryan Jimenez.
Morning, commissioners. It's that time of year already again. So I'm here to present the CRD quarterly report for quarter two. If you go to page 3, please. Thank you, Patrick, for your help again this morning. You'll see our complaint summary report. The total complaints that we've received for this quarter two has been 115 complaints. 34 telecom complaints, 54 electric utility complaints, and that's of course combined with the co-ops, the electric co-ops. We got 13 water complaints, 4 gas, propane, and 10 internet cable complaints. If you go to page 4, you'll see the reason for the complaints. We kind of broke it down for you all. We got the billing issues at 31, dissatisfied with service 15, outages. We've had 37 outage complaints in this quarter. Repair delays 22, and disconnected accounts at 10. Any questions, commissioners? On the 4th page, you'll see the complaint resolution statistics. The average time to resolve informal complaints for this quarter has been 15 business days. So once we receive the complaint there at CRD, we process it through our system. We'll send it to the utility for review and response. We do allow them 5 business days to take their time in reviewing and responding back to us on the complaint. Unless it's a disconnected account or some special circumstance, then we'll ask them to expedite the response back to us and hopefully get something, start mediating the complaint within the 2-3 business days. And then of course, once we do get the response from the utility, we send it off to the consumer and we allow them 5 business days to respond back to us. So they take their time in reviewing the information and look to respond back to us and mediate the issue for them. As you see on the bottom, the number of complaints now in the formal process via CRD's informal complaint process has been 3. So this quarter, there's been 3 complaints that came through our process that are now in the formal process. Kind of a higher number than usual. We have been dealing with some pretty extensive complaints this last quarter, so not surprising either. If you turn the page, you'll see the total amount of recovered costs for quarter 2. A little over $4,800 we received back for the consumer for this quarter. And now I just like to take the time to say thank you to the other PRC teams that help us through these complaints. As you know, it usually takes a village to try to get these complaints resolved. Choya and her team, Ed, Tim, Gabriella with the utility team, Jason and his team. They've all been really good in helping us out. Scott, his team is awesome in getting information from us, and when it does turn into a formal complaint, and so we all try to work together to try to get these complaints resolved. And like I said, sometimes it takes a whole team to get this just one complaint resolved. So I like to thank everybody for their help on that too. So I'll stand for any questions.
Thank you again for the presentation and more importantly for the work that you and your team do to help consumers.
Thank you, sir.
Commissioners, do you have any questions?
Hey, commissioners, thank you. You all have a great day.
Next on the agenda, we have communications with Chief of Staff, but I don't think we have any communications to discuss there. So we'll move on to the last agenda item, which is communications with commissioners. I could go ahead and kick us off. Since the last meeting, which we had in Las Cruces, that was, we should definitely go back to Las Cruces. We had some participation, which was nice to see. And after that, I had mentioned that I was going to tour some facilities in Carlsbad that Chevron invited me to their tour. And so that was instructive, and I learned a lot, and it certainly helps to clarify some of the, I guess, questions that I didn't know that I should ask, or things that I didn't know I should be thinking about. And so was asking questions about the different operational units and how they use electricity, and when they could be shut off and how flexible they are in terms of loads. And it was also good to hear from them with respect to their needs, which is not something, definitely not a foreign idea. They need more electricity. It was good to be there in person and seeing their facilities, and, you know, just kind of asking like, are these poles yours? Are these poles Excel's? And because they need more power. And I know that Excel is working to get them more power, and obviously there are issues that are beyond our control when it comes to transmission, and generation that's interconnected to the transmission system. And then there are areas where we can be helpful despite all of that. And I certainly appreciate the work that Commissioner O'Connell is doing with the SPPRSC, the Regional States Committee. And so that's an ongoing conversation. I think the one thing that is clear is that helping the oil and gas industry electrify is a lot better for emissions, and it's also more cost effective. And we need to think about how we can help improve that situation, and also thinking about the other ratepayers to make sure they're not unfairly absorbing some of the costs. But that's an important conversation, I think, that we should have more of. And anyway, very thought-provoking. I mean, honestly, things that I have been taking a large portion of my thoughts the last couple of years. And so aside from that, I don't have any other announcements. I don't think I have any travel coming up. Commissioners?
Well, there are two of us that will be traveling to Boston for the neighborhood annual meeting, and we'll be attending those sessions. And then shortly after that, we'll be in Kansas City with the Southwest Power Pool, having discussions those. As you pointed out, with these regional transmission authorities, the states have divested themselves of some authority over issues that affect our citizens. And maybe a prime example is what you experienced in the oil patch. Is that we're relying upon another body of decision makers to approve transmission that didn't exist many years ago. And so people are upset that power is not available right now when they need it, but it takes time for those processes to go through. And fortunately, NextEra is going to be commencing that construction project next month. And Southwestern Public Service Company tells me that they're hopeful that transmission line will be built and the power will be accessible to them. Mr. D'Antonio, correct me if I'm wrong, but maybe in May of 2026. So you know, a pretty quick construction phase for that 100+ mile line, which should alleviate some of the limitations that currently exist with respect to getting power in Southern Eddy and Lee counties. So That's why it's important for us to be active in the Southwest Power Pool. Why it will be imperative if we stay engaged with the events occurring in the west, either SPP plus or EDAM. And I know you, Commissioner Aguilar, are very engaged in some of those processes. So it's important for this commission to be engaged in those because frankly, we have to look at up to the best interest of our citizens. And now that there are other layers that we have to deal with, we need our voice heard in those meetings as well, because they do have some power and authority to approve or not approve critical transmission that is sorely needed in parts of our state. And so thank you all for being engaged for so long, and I look forward to being engaged as we move forward, particularly with Southwest Power Pool. So those are the two things that are coming up on my calendar, and I believe Commissioner O'Connell's calendar. I think we had a very successful meeting, last open meeting in Las Cruces, and I've heard nothing but compliments for us to go down there and have that meeting again, and that went well, and we certainly bragged about their facilities, and being back in our own hearing room, we'll continue to brag about those facilities because the people on that far side of the room could actually see the people on that far side of the room, which doesn't occur in these offices. But I know our chief of staff is working on getting us some facilities up and running in Albuquerque, and hopefully we're getting closer to having at least more certainty with respect to what's going to occur here in Santa Fe in the near future. We look forward to those challenges and those opportunities. And I'm glad we have Ms. Corey on staff who is guiding us through that process.
Thanks. I just wanted to circle back on that Eileen Akers case. I wanted to make sure, recognize that part of what's worth reading and all that is the performance of our staff, Darren Ziggich, that he did a great job of analyzing the question, providing testimony that help confirm and provide clarity to things. So I've been critical of staff and other instances. I want to make sure I also recognize that they're making contributions here too. And so that was one of many. And then another person I think we should recognize is Agatha Malik. You get both reference the SPP stuff that's going on. I've only been there for about 2 years, but my understanding from talking to SPP is never have they tried to accomplish so much through the RS short period of time. So kind of things that are teed up for the Kansas City meeting is a tariff revision around large loads that will hopefully facilitate adding new load and allowing some flexibility for those loads with their interconnections so that hopefully it can happen quickly. There's also, they're working on a demand response proposal, which to your point, Commissioner Nybert, is super interesting because what can the RTO do that could facilitate demand response in a way that enhances what the state commissions are doing rather than replaces it or makes whatever the state commissions are doing irrelevant or whatever. That's kind of the conversation that I'm expecting is going to happen around demand response at the RSC. They're reforming their transmission planning process. That's a multiple 100-page tariff revision that's going through. So all that stuff's happening, and we threw Agatha Malik kind of into the deep end didn't expect to be president this year, but me being president made her chair of call. So she's chairing the staff committee that's dealing with these enormous important issues. And from what I've seen in all reports, she's handling that with grace and representing New Mexico well. So I just wanted to make a shout out there. And then the other thing that I'm spending a decent amount of time on this month is preparing for that neighborhood meeting in Boston. There will be another FERC neighborhood collaboration meeting on Sunday morning as part of that event. And the topic there is RTO governance. So FERC wants to hear from state commissioners what helps and what could be improved, or we have mutual advice for each other on how to proceed with RTOs. And so I've been working with Commissioner Ed Lodge from Idaho. The two of us are representing the Western commissioners, and as always, when we get those forums, the first thing you hear from the Western commissioners is the West is different. So just preview for that. One of the angles on that presentation is West is not dominated by RTO service the way the rest other parts of the country are. Southeast is similar to us in that respect, but that doesn't mean there's no organization handled, right? That I talked about WEAP earlier in the meeting. There's a lot of things that WEAP does, like they help with COSER and COSER, RAM. Services emerge, we've got the imbalance market going right now. We're looking at day ahead markets. And so RTO question, I think one of the is, do you want an ISO providing services or do you want an RTO providing services? And that's kind of a state regulator question, because how many important our states and how those services get delivered. So yeah, it's not like we'll show up in Boston to say, oh, well, we got nothing to say because we don't have an RTO, but we're preparing for that. Looking forward to that conversation. And the way that's going to be structured, we'll have like 5 minutes just to overview the West, and then it'll be about a minute discussion focused on the West, but the panel is going to be all of the FERC commissioners and all of the 10 neighborhood commissioners. Anyway, so looking forward to that, but spending some time trying to make sure President Lodge and I represent the West well. That's how I'm accounting for myself too.
You're doing a great job. Thank you. Well, I think we've reached the end of our agenda. So unless there's any objection, I think we can adjourn. Not seeing anything, so we're adjourned. Thank you.